Good afternoon. Instead of the program scheduled for today, I have the enormous honor of having as my guest a person who is not only the major operatic figure of our age, but one of its towering musicians, Maria Callas. Thank you for being with us, Miss Callas.
I thank you for having me, Mr. Ardoin.
The details of your career are not only well known, they're virtually legendary at this point. So with your permission, what I would like to do this afternoon is not delve into the biography of this career, but rather investigate the thinking and musical force at work behind it. And I'd like to start with one word, the word technique. I think it is perhaps frequently misunderstood. Could you tell us what is your definition of technique and what function does it serve in terms of music?
Well, in my poor words, technique should be the equipment that one has in being able to interpret. Technique would be, for instance, like one goes to school to learn how to read and write. And then after that, you go into from lower grades, you go to the higher grades, and then high school, and then college. This is what we call technique. You learn the solfège, you learn the harmonies, you learn music, you learn little by little how to read and write, and above that, then you learn how to interpret and how to resist certain, well, of course, the vocal projection and so many things, and how to be on stage, how to act. The little that the conservatory, or the lot that the conservatory, rather, can teach you is giving you the technique just as you go to school.
But this technique itself is not to be learned just for its own sake, is it?
Well, you have to learn how to read and write to learn how to read.
Exactly.
So that is exactly it.
Well, once a musician has acquired a technique...
In other words, a musician, may I interrupt you? Yes. A musician, as you say, singers, have to go through the same technique as instrumentists go. In other words, a violinist, a pianist, or any instrumentalist has to learn his reading and writing. So we undergo the same exact treatment. Only instead of having an instrument, we have vocal cords, and we use our body and vocal cords.
Well, then, in terms of the music, do you think that the function of a singer and the singer's technique is of a different nature than that of an instrumentalist?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. It is exactly the same approach, the same music, the same technique would be probably all those little notes, all the legatos, all the everything that comes with music is what you call technique. Now, technique also could be vocal, of course, is how when an instrumentist knows how to make his notes well with the proper intonation, because intonation is also a necessity for instrumentalists, as with us, don't you think?
I quite agree.
So then we have to learn how to cope with notes, how to cope with soft notes, loud notes, the mezzo fortes, the glissando, well, these are details that, of course, the public does not know. Just a musician can know. Well, it's long, hard work.
I remember some time ago, a new singer came along on the horizon, and everyone was very excited and said about her, she has a marvelous trill. This seems rather strange to me, that someone should find it so exceptional that someone has a trill. I should think that it would be an accepted thing, just as we would be very shocked if we found a violinist without a trill.
Exactly. It is a necessity. This is the equipment that goes with our instrument. In these operas that we perform, you find these technic things, little notes, trills, and well, many abbellimenti, as they call. I wouldn't know really in English how they would call them. Embellishments. Yes. Of hundreds of I can't say, I don't know exactly whether hundreds, but I'm afraid so, of qualities of acciacaturas and things. So how can we deal with these things unless we have them physically and technically, just as any instrumentalist?
Well,
we have to.
Wouldn't you say that the purpose of mastering a trill, an acciaccatura, a paggiatura, or what have you, is not to have mastered this thing, but to use it,
It is a necessity.
for an expressive purpose.
First of all, this is the technique that one must have. Then, of course, if a musician is an honest musician and intends to become someone to serve music, they should, of course, use all these ways of expression, or rather embellishments, as expression, especially because we differentiate from instrumentalists. They have only the music, with or without orchestra or piano, whatever it is. We have that plus music. In other words, we have to express ourselves with embellishments, without embellishments, with color, with notes, with every possible technical necessity, and use that to the service of expression, because we cannot, of course, ignore the drama or the comedy, whatever thing we deal with. So you see, we have twice as much responsibility on expression. I have always tried to look further into everything because it is in my nature. There must be a justification. It cannot be an embellishment just for the sake of glamour, or shall we say fireworks. There is usually always an explanation. For instance, you spoke about a trill, which is most interesting. Trills are necessary and they have to be well performed. Because, in opera I say, because, shall we take an example of Trovatore, Verdi. Verdi usually used a lot of trills. Also Donizetti will reach to that also. But Verdi was really very fond of his trills, and I feel, and I found, that with words he always used a trill if he wanted to express fear, happiness, joy, insecureness. So you cannot avoid that. In other words, you must have the trill to convey what the composer wanted, not what we want. So you see, a trill is necessary, a glissando is necessary, and all these little technical things are absolutely necessary for our equipment as a musician and an interpreter.
Well, I must ask you, there has been a trend in recent years to provide new embellishments and new decorations for the operas of the bel canto to such a degree that at times the music itself, the vocal line, is not to be recognized. And I think that these are being done there with the misconception that this music is purely for vocal display, which I think is nonsense.
I think that is, it's not nonsense. Unfortunately, Mr. Ardoin, it is not serious. Because when these great composers, and by great I mean just the ones I do consider the greatest, are Donizetti, Bellini, and Verdi, with, of course, Rossini in the picture, absolutely were ill at the idea and with the reality of their contemporary singers spoiling the drama and the reason of their composition. Also because every one of them had a style of their own. I might bring you a small example of Bellini, the shall we say, embellishment of Bellini, that dear me, how do you say it? Differentiation between Donizetti, Rossini, and Bellini. He always used to use a natural, shall we say, a one-tone embellishment to the 3 or 4 notes embellishment that he had. Whereas in Rossini, you always find it a half a tone, and you do it automatically. Bellini has his, for instance, in the Casta Diva, first the flute plays, and then you sing it. And it is one tone, not half. And if he did want a half a tone, he just put it there. So this is really something that he, I'm sure, was sick about if it was not respected.
Well, how did you devise your various cadenzas for operas like Sonnambula and Lucia?
Well, it is together with the maestro, together with your own good taste, together with your trying to do justice to the composer, his style, and, 2 or 3 heads put together. Also throughout the years, because you do change. I did change a lot, for instance, in Lucia. A dramatic soprano starting to do Lucia again, because may I remind you that Lucia was the soprano that sang, or rather, shall we put it this way, the soprano that sang Lucia in those years was the same soprano that sang Puritani, Sonnambula, and Norma.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a dramatic soprano with coloratura. In fact, the Lucia is written rather in a low tessitura. Therefore, the cadenzas are, of course, a piacere, as they say, at will, at desire. But it is always a piacere to the good taste of the interpreter. And the interpreter must, of course, respect the
nature of
the composer, not the music itself. So we must do justice to this great man that we serve, because we are not great. We are servants of the great. So we must put truth. This is the way I feel. When they say frequently that, Callas was so exigent and she was so ambitious, she wanted... it is not so. I am exigent and I am ambitious only for one thing. I must serve this great art the best I can. By doing that, we of course are not great, but we hope to be able to serve the great. We interpret. So we have a double responsibility. We can make or spoil sublime music. So you see that it is it's a very difficult job we have.
Exactly.
That is why I must be so sometimes harsh upon other people when they do not do their duty well, do their performing well. And it is not that I want anything for myself, because it would be so much easier for me to just, sort of sing the phrases, basta, and I have my good notes, and I can have my wonderful applause. But then, how have we served these great people? Have we done our justice well? And then it makes work so much more beautiful. So it gives us a reason of living, and it gives you an everyday desire, a challenge of doing better every day.
Because you're not an artist who's ever stood
now,
still.
Lucia, exactly, no. But there's nobody that stays still. Have you stood still? People go on. They progress, I hope.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully, that is our duty since we're born, to bring better things to life. Or at least try. So, coming back to the Lucia I was telling you, the cadenzas that I started off with were sort of traditional. Rather good or bad, but it wasn't all that bad. I took the usual cadenzas and I managed with that. Little by little, I tried to eliminate things that are not extremely in good taste. Also because I myself became a better musician. Sonnambula we have changed frequently, because also you do change maestri. You cannot sing with one all the time. That's bad, and it's also because you sing all around the world. And then also you yourself thought this 2 years ago or 1 year ago, and today you change your mind, becoming a better musician, or the many things, psychologically or etc.
Well, in addition to this trend today to over-embellish music,
I condemn sincerely.
And I quite agree with you. There's also a trend that I would like to have your opinion on, and this is one of opening up so many cuts in an opera that had not been heard before, virtually, giving operas complete. And I wonder, what is your feeling about cutting an opera?
I'm happy you asked me that, because it's been bothering me frequently. There are some young musicians, more or less competent, that find it their duty to open these cuts. I have been brought up since a very early age, thank God, and I'm lucky for that, into the bel canto world. So it is not a merit of mine. I just happened to be born at a period where I just caught the last bit of these people that were very competent. Now, these great maestri have taught me ages ago that nothing should be repeated that much. Repetition is monotonous. Once you've put a point over, whether it's musical or phrasing, a bis of anything, in other words, the repetition of any, even the most beautiful melody, can the first time be a great success, and the second automatically, or nearly always automatically, becomes a less, shall we say, effective.
Mm-hmm.
If you do repeat out of necessity, because out of good taste, out of stage necessities, staging, then you must do slight changes. But slight, I say, which I have done in Pirata, in certain caballettas, as I say, of Bellini also. But I have been taught that if you repeat, you must make slight changes in the variations of the melody, or rather the oh dear, how can I find the word? Not the melody. It's really not changed.
So it's like a variation.
Exactly, that is it. Because it's usually never on the melody, but on the cabaletta, as they call the conclusion of the theme or the state of mind that the interpreter is stating, the state of soul or expression, should not be repeated because it is ineffective. That I've been taught and insisted upon. Now I feel that if we have had such great celebrities and such humble and great men and really competent men, shall we say from De Sabata, Serafine and downwards, not upwards unfortunately, I wish we did have upwards, or rather shall we say in our days, but from these men down to 100 years ago or 50 years ago, they knew better than we did. So if they came to that conclusion when, in their years, people were more patient, they sat in the theater with much more patience. In other words, you could get a public to sit for 5 hours, 6 hours at a performance. Now, I don't think it proper. I, myself, being a musician, but trying always to be detached also as a musician because I'm an interpreter, I cannot sit through a performance for 5 hours in the same seat, taking in even the most gorgeous music. I think modern times have seen to that. You cannot force a person to sit around, in the same place for quite a while.
Perhaps you had in mind Wagner.
Yes, I have in mind Wagner, absolutely, because I think that Wagner is not all that easy yet to take in. Especially for the young people that we must entice into music, because opera is a bit, shall we call, out of style. We have the disadvantage that opera is out of style. It's old-fashioned. So when we objectively see that we have to deal with something really lovely, but you cannot bring youngsters into thinking that opera is modern, they are right, it is not. Because you cannot sing phrases like I love you and I hate you, singing them for 10 times. I mean, it's frankly sort of ridiculous today of today. And probably it always was. Now, as it is not all that ridiculous, I hope, we must try to eliminate any boredom on anybody's part or any ridiculous attitude. By doing that, we have to slim up things, keep the necessary, and do justice to our interpreter, to our composers. That is what I feel. So by opening cuts, all we do is damage the composer, opera in itself, and we tire people.
I think
uselessly.
I think one of the unique qualities about your performances, or rather your singing, have been the tempos you have set or taken, or the way you have seen music. Could you tell me how you decide on a tempo and what makes you arrive at the ones that you have? Because quite often the tempi you have chosen are frequently a little slower than the norm.
Oh, no, John Ardoin. I'm afraid I sort of do not take slow tempi.
Well,
unless
it gives
it's necessary.
this impression at times, may I say.
Oh, well, there's one more thing I've been taught in my younger days by these great musicians. There are tempis that you can take that are not all that slow, but so long as you take them with a slower attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that also said to the orchestras by these great maestri, saying, gentlemen, let's keep this tempo, but please give it a more slow attitude. Or the same thing applies to the same tempo. When I've heard this, or I've been told, take it the same way, but please give it a slightly quicker pace or an agitation into it. which has nothing to do with the actual tempo. I can take a very slow tempo and give it an agitating quality or color or pace without budging at all from the rhythm or the tempo.
So it's sort of a psychological thing.
Yes,
then.
it's a sort of an animation, and well, these are the wonderful things about music, that you have never stopped to learn and to give. But I have also, for instance, I bring an example, Don Carlos, the aria of Eboli, which is not my part, of course, but I every now and then enjoy singing other people's parts. Eboli, the great aria, I feel is taken usually too slow. Why, you will say? My answer to that is her soul is so tormented, her agitation is so great, that I cannot see her relaxing so much to the extent of singing and terribly agitated and frustrated and heart-breaking piece with a very slow, comfortable pace. So really there I have overdone it in pace.
Are you referring particularly to this sinner section?
O Don Fatale.
I know
yes.
the sinner section
That's
of it.
That's right. Well, also the end, but in the beginning especially, the shall we say, the entering of the Eboli, her exclamation, which is it's an outburst. So you cannot make an outburst, such a strong outburst, with a calm tempo. You cannot do it. I feel that now this is instinct. It is experience, and it is courage also, because you have to say, and I've been taught by my great maestri of Once Upon a Time, that if we have to do justice to the composer by changing slightly what is written, because we have so very little written, and we have to go by that. Now, if we have to go a little slower or a little quicker to do them justice, well, then never mind, let's do it.
Well, do the words have a great part in this?
And the success of the performance
Yes.
we have to look at the result of the performance. It must be a success.
Well, from Tempi, let's go to the question of the recitative, because I feel that no one has approached your handling of the recitative. It's a complete mastery. And I wish you could discuss for us for a few minutes what has gone into your understanding of the recitative and why.
My recitative, I'll tell you, I have always been terribly intrigued by recitative. There is a proportion always to be found, because recitative would mean exactly speaking on notes. Once upon a time, in the 19th century, when these operas were born, the people did not care about recitatives, as you know, at least from what we read. The composers did really go to a lot of trouble for these recitatives. They created the music, every note on every word. They used to sing it themselves. They used to create the recitative on the words. So therefore they took a great pain and they gave it great importance. Now, then the public did not care for it. They would just come in for the arias. Now the people do care. They sit throughout a performance and they care very much about anything we do. So therefore we have a clear path to really show our value, or the composer's value. Recitatives was shown to me clearly, especially by Maestro Serafin, and an occasion of Norma. He said, well, of course, had studied Norma since my early years at the Conservatoire, because those are the things you learn at, shall we say, school, which is our school, the conservatory. I had studied this repertoire a long time ago, and for many years. When I auditioned for him in Norma, he said, well, that's fine. And he finally eventually found a place for me to debut, because he needed a Norma, and it was Florence in 1948, December. When I went to Rome to coach with him the few days, I sang the part through, and he says, that's fine. Now you do me one favor. Go home and talk these phrases over to yourself. In other words, sing them as though you were talking. Come back with the proportions you think are right, and then we'll discuss and see. But there is always a proportion and a rhythm, even in the talking, shall we say, recitative. It is hard to express in words, But, and I don't think I put my way of thinking plainly. But in other words, it is, you have to talk. You have to talk with notes.
Mm-hmm.
And then these notes always have a rhythm, because in every talk, even the way we talk now, there is you start lowly, and then you increase the volume, and then you end. Or you leave it halfway. Mm-hmm. It is exactly talking, with the only difficulty that we do have notes, and we do have a rhythm on stage. Because on stage also, you cannot hold a pause for such a long time. There are certain, I don't know, shall we say pauses? I don't know how to put them. Certain emptiness between phrases, between recitatives, or between phrases that you cannot overdo on stage, whereas in life you may. But there, the public that listens, there is a limit to any silence. Mm-hmm. So you have to go on no matter what. In other words, all this is very intangible. It is very complicated, and yet so simple. You have to do your own proportion, and you have to work yourself every day to it. And it changes from performance to performance, from 1 minute to the other, from what comes before, from what you have done before, from what has happened before, from your colleagues. So you see, it's it's a sort of a reflex thing that happens. Of course, you learn it at home. You keep on studying at home, and then once you're on the performance, in the performance, it is to your good taste and to developments of every second that happens during the performance.
Well, you touched upon Norma a moment ago, yes, which of course is the role that, if any had to be chosen, it's probably the role you most completely own as your own. And yes, I wonder if you could tell me, I sense a difference between the Norma, say, of Mexico City in 1950 and the ones in Paris in 1965. There was, of course, nothing wrong with the one in 1950 in Mexico. It's quite a brilliant achievement. But the one in 1965 went so much deeper into the heart of the score than you had before. What sort of thinking took place in your experience during these two extremes of Norma?
How many years ago was that Mexico performance?
That would be 18 years ago.
Well, how old was I 18 years ago? If I'm 44 now, take out 18.
Uh-huh.
How many things have happened to me in life since 18 years ago? How much have I studied? How many operas have been performed since then? What have I learned from the consequent operas and that have served as a lesson to this opera? Many things have happened, so therefore I have changed. Not much, because the change is not all that much. I think a person cannot change that much, and music cannot change that much.
No, it's an incredible refinement.
It is a refinement.
Yes.
It is a conscientiousness of a musician that you cannot take care of, because you see, when you sing, you have to give yourself time to grow up. Mm-hmm. So what I could not do 18 years ago, I can do now. What I did better 18 years ago because I was young, I might not do now. So it is always I give and have to give. In other words, I have improved other things. I might have spoiled other things, because also when you do improve, well, then the more a musician grows, the less he makes concessions. Therefore, the less he can keep a phrase, shall we say, accommodating for him, the less breathing, the longer breathing and resting paces you can have. So the more you don't give in, the more tired you get during certain phrases. Whereas when you were younger, your main preoccupation was, well, I've got this high note and I've got that difficult phrase. Let's start sort of forget the difficulties of before and, avoid tiring ourselves before, so as we'll have this effect better. Well, the older you grow, the less you want to give in to feebleness. But unfortunately, what you do improve here, you might spoil there. Mm-hmm. And these are such intangible things. No matter how much technique you have, each performance is different, because the human being is made of chemistry, of a human throat, of a mind, of reflexes, of God knows what. I mean, we are, after all, very human. And it is not an instrument that you can play with. I mean, touch. It is really intangible.
Of course. This brings us back to, once again, it's the question of having a first-class technique that allows you the spontaneity to change.
Yes. But this technique must be learned in your very, very early years. In other words, I find that a musician or a singer, whatever he does, singer or an instrumentalist, must start very, very young in life, as we did then. Mm-hmm. I started very terribly young, so I had made all my technique and experience years and years ago, during my conservatory years. Of course, I was singing also then, on stage. So you see, I started 13 years old, actually, and therefore all the surprises that I could have, and I can deal with any, I'm proud to say that I can deal with any vocal difficulty and technical difficulty, because I don't have many surprises now. Because I learned during my early days all the possibilities. That is why you study.
You were speaking the other day about the immense amount of literature which you had sung in Greece in your student days. I believe you recalled the Pergolesi and the Rossini Stabat Mater.
Oh, yes.
And many arie antiche and Lieder.
Many. I've done everything I could possibly put my hands on. More or less well, but one helps the other. If you do Purcell, it helps... I don't know what other composer. If you do Verdi, it helps Bellini, vice versa. Donizetti, Rossini. I think that every music gives you more maturity and more inner views.
Well, you've sung such a phenomenal range of material.
Yes.
From Sonnambula and Lucia to Kundry and Brunhilde.
Oh, I've even sung Giordano.
Giordano.
Who is not extremely, sort of considered the best composers of any time. And yet, that also has served.
Well, did you sing Wagner?
Oh, yes.
I know you sang Wagner, but did you sing it in a manner different from the Italian way of singing? Is there special demands that Wagner made upon you that Verdi did not?
Oh, no. Wagner is so easier.
Than Verdi?
Oh, indeed.
Tell us how.
Well, I'll tell you why and how. Wagner, where he's clean cut from the beginning, there's no doubt where it will begin and where it will end. Brunhilde, she is a hero from the beginning, and there is no instability
no delineation of character.
None whatsoever. She does not have technical difficulties. She does not have all these abbellimenti that I spoke of before. She is one solid rock, more or less. So you see, the risk is much less. She is not uncovered vocally. In other words, the orchestration is so powerful under her that she feels very secure. She, I say, soprano. Tristan and Isolde, for instance, Isolde, I found very easy. Why? Because she's supported by a tremendous orchestra. The notes are not extremely difficult. Even the high notes are not all that many, not nearly as Norma or even in Verdi. And the technical difficulties are not there. The abbellimenti, the fioriture, they're not there. There's very little to it.
And also,
have you ever thought of that?
No, I quite agree with you. And it also occurs to me that Isolde actually sings less music than does Norma.
Exactly. So it is really, believe me, not as difficult as the bel canto. And by bel canto, I mean not the beautiful singing which bel canto is supposedly known. The bel canto does not mean beautiful singing. It means an equipment, or in other words, what we were talking about. The technique of bel canto is the Rossini, Bellini, Donizetti, and all the composers of then. But excuse me, it is the same attitude of Mozart, Beethoven, or all the other composers. The same exact approach, with the same difficult technical difficulties as our colleagues instrumentalists.
So a musician is a musician.
A musician is a musician, period, and there is no excuse. Now, I repeat, I don't want to appear presumptuous, Mr. Ardoin, but when singers come to audition or to sing, saying rather other people saying, well, she doesn't have this, or he doesn't have this, and he doesn't have that, and he doesn't have the trill, and he can't do the caccatura, and he can't do the abbellimenti, well, then you cannot sing, period. Because in these books, shall we say, the partition of composers like Verdi and down have technical, actual things written to be performed and must be performed, whether you like it or not. So how will you get out of a trill? How will you get out of scales when they're written there looking you in the face?
Exactly.
You cannot cheat.
However, I hate to tell you, it is done.
Well, it is not supposed to be, because once upon a time you would be considered inadept, and you would have to sing little roles, smaller roles.
Do you think
it is not enough to have a beautiful voice, John Ardoin?
Of course.
There's not that there's nothing wrong with a beautiful voice. No, exactly, because a beautiful voice, what does that mean? When you have to interpret a role, you have to have thousands of colors during the performance to portray the words you do. Happiness, joy, unhappiness, sorrow, fear. How can you have just a beautiful voice, period? You must put that to the service of expression. So therefore, even if you have to sing harshly sometimes, which I frequently have done, shrill, it is a necessity of expression. It is written there. You have to respect the words, and you have to do it, even if people will not understand. But on the long road, they will, because you have to persuade people of what you're doing. We are not doing anything special. We are doing what we're supposed to. It's written there. We have to.
Well, from this standpoint, with your permission, I would like to take one of your most famous recorded scenes, the Sleepwalking Scene from Macbeth. And I'd like to discuss it with you, section by section, if we might, and have you take the things which we have discussed this afternoon, questions of coloration, expression, tempo, rubati, and so forth, and show us how you applied them to this particular scene, which I think is one of your most extraordinary recordings. Could you tell us something, give us a little background, and set the stage first for this particular scene of Lady Macbeth in the third act of Verdi's opera?
I'll try my best, Mr. Ardoin, but I would like to say something very amusing. When I recorded this aria, I recorded quite a few Verdi arias then at the same time, and I'll never forget this incident. I was in quite good voice then, that day, because you know we have our ups and downs. Sometimes you sing well, sometimes you don't for no reason at all, more or less. I was kind of very proud as soon as I stepped down to listen to the playback. And I told our then artistic director, Walter Legg, I said, well, Walter, that was, I think, some good singing, don't you think? He says, oh, extraordinary. And he says, well, you'll hear it now, and then you'll understand that you'll have to redo it the proper way. I was a bit, shocked. I said, what do you mean by that? Well, he says, you'll listen to it, you'll see. In fact, I did listen. It was astonishing as perfection of vocal, which is what we were talking about. It was perfect vocally. Nobody could say anything about it. But the main idea of this sleepwalking scene was not underlined. In other words, she is in a nightmare sleepwalking stage. She has to convey all these odd thoughts that go through her head. Evil, fearsome, terrifying. So I had made a masterpiece of vocal singing, but I had not done my duty as an interpreter.
You hadn't captured what you felt to be
I
the
had to
mood.
break it down in many, many phrases.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately, as soon as I heard it, I said, well, you're right, now I understand. And I went and performed it.
You broke it down into phrases because you felt that her nature was such that...
No, I did not feel.
You knew.
I knew that there are phrases that you have to... not phrases, mental thoughts.
Yeah.
In this sleepwalking scene, she has, I can't remember, are there 5 or 6? Well, we'll see it through if we go through the piece now. I think she must have at least 6 mental thoughts that come to her, so that's one completely different from the other. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think it's a sort of a mad scene while she's sleeping. She's speaking out loud.
Could you quickly tell our listeners why Lady Macbeth has reached this state of mind?
Well, this state of mind, shall we say, is conscience. She has helped her husband into a very evil event. She, for her vanity, has persuaded her husband to kill the king so he would become king.
And now
very
she
ambitious
has
lady.
conscience.
And disaster has come because her husband could not stand it and went stark mad, as history said. So she finally copes with madness in the sleepwalking scene. And a mad person, of course, has thoughts, one thought into the other with no continuity. They're completely discontinued. So for 1 minute she's talking about the blood stains on her hand that terrify her and she can never get them cleaned. And on the other hand, right away she says, well, come now, you must get ready to receive these people. Everything is fine. Then all of a sudden she'd come back to another mental attitude. In other words, she is out of her mind. So you cannot bring it through one line, from beginning to the end. You have to break it into every thought. In other words, the words of thought. The words that the composer has put there have thought it out for you before.
What has Verdi given you? What sort of directions here for this first section?
Well, shall we say for the first section, it starts with saying that there are stains on my hands. Go away. Damn them. 1, 2. This is the time. Why are you trembling? Are you not going in? Now, have you seen a difference there? Already we have 2 changes.
Exactly.
One stain with the other. Why don't they go away? And she says, 1 stain, 2 stains. All of a sudden she comes out saying, this is the hour. Let's get ready. So there is a break.
You get such an earthly quality on the words
earthly.
uno, due, that like it's coming
earthly.
from the back of your mind.
It is. That's exactly it. That's what I had to convey in this piece.
Let's play this first phrase now.
Yes.
What happens now after this first phrase, musically?
Well, after this, while the music goes on always, you see, because we have no time to sit down and, take our time, as in theater. The pauses don't exist. Music goes on, so you have to deal with these mental states with the music going on. She says, 1, 2, and then, "Gli è questa l'ora, get ready." Why, are you afraid to go in, she says. You, a great warrior? How could you be so... codardo would mean a coward. Oh, shame on you. Come quickly. And then all of a sudden she says, who could ever imagine that in that old man there could be so much blood? So you see the difference. This is being stark mad. How could you convey this all in one beautiful quality? You cannot.
And vocally,
cannot absolutely.
As they will hear right now, vocally, the
Even
difference
speaking,
between the two
as I
is
speak very
extraordinary.
badly. I speak very badly. It's not my forte. But even speaking, you cannot convey, God, how much blood with, oh, how could you be such a coward? A great warrior. There you are.
Her mind is wondering.
Her mind is wondering 1 minute, terrified the other, commanding the other. So you have to convey that in voice also, especially.
And on the word imaginar, how has Verdi helped you convey this?
There are 10th notes, I think you call them. They are accented.
16th notes. Yeah.
16th notes, pardon. And they are accentuated.
Each one forza.
In other words, sforzando, which means touching. So therefore, they are not cadenzas because they are rhythmic, accented, which means terra. Could not imagine. So,
like
something
heavy breathing.
Terrifying,
Yes.
though with no breathing. So it is quite clear if a musician sees it, he would understand. I wish the public would. But I'm sure by playing and repeatedly playing, one would get the idea. It's a sort of an obsessive quality saying nobody could imagine such a thing. In fact, well, it's, I say, difficult to explain.
And Verdi really, at this point, divides the scene into two halves.
Completely.
Yes.
Completely.
Let's hear this
yes.
next section now before we go any further. After this section, Lady Macbeth's thoughts are interrupted by the doctor, who says "che parlo."
Yes, well, that she cannot hear.
She's not aware of the
No,
medical.
she is completely sleepwalking and cannot understand anything and does not look at anything, but has her thoughts that are going on in her mind. She has very many changes of thoughts, but very brusque, as you see. And then again, she comes back to the same obsessiveness of, I cannot clean the blood on my hands. I can never clean it. Nobody will ever clean it.
Why do you suppose at this point Verdi marked this section, Di sangue umano, as triple piano?
Because it should be nearly husky in the quality, nearly eerie. It's terror.
And then such an immense change, which he marks con forza after that.
Yes, because where she says Di sangue umano is terror. She doesn't want anybody to hear her. It's just so much fear. Has it ever happened that sometimes you're so terrified that you nearly whisper, you're afraid that people will hear? And then the Arabia intera, in other words, the whole of Arabia will never be able to clean all these. This is an abnormal state of mind and of feelings.
And again, here she withdraws.
Again, yes, because it's an outburst, and then again she's quiet. Because it's fear. Every now and then you have the outbursts. But there are outbursts that you have to always rebuild in the musical phrases, which is extremely difficult also. Because it is always an outburst that is within the possible capture of the ear. In other words, not too loud so it won't erase the pianos. It has to grow in. Another technical thing that I wish the public could understand. It should not be too loud. It should not be after too soft.
Let's play this section right now. right after this section, when she's worrying about cleaning her hands again, says there's no balsam that will do it, there's an immediate change in the orchestra. You get an agitato almost in the strings.
Because she sees that probably in her
it's impossible.
mind, she's already forgotten that. In her mind, another thought has come and is telling her husband, come now, you must get ready. You must get dressed. They're waiting for you. Nobody, no dead comes alive, so don't be afraid. So you see, these thoughts come and go with such abrupt changes.
And then the section when she urges Macbeth to bed is so lyrical all of a sudden. It has more warmth than any other spot in the scene.
Yes, because she's a very persuasive woman, and she has such strength over her husband, to my idea, or at least from what we go by words and history or whatever it is, that she must not have been a terribly ugly woman. She must have really been very fascinating for her husband to be able to do with him as she pleased. So they were completely tied together, and that is why she says after, come, let's go. Don't be afraid. Let's go to bed. Come, calm yourself. It is a woman that is absolutely together with her husband, and they are both very ambitious.
From where is derived this idea of bat alcuno?
In her stark, raving mindness, she has these terrors of hearing, which in fact in the first act she has heard knockings on the doors with her husband. This is the recall. She recollects the knocking on the door of the people coming and saying, God, we found him dead. We found the king dead. So she recollects. These are all recollections of the past. All the sleepwalking scene is a recollection of the very beginning of the opera and throughout the opera. So you see, actually it is a mad scene in a sleepwalking form. So how can a mad woman with all crazy thoughts jumping from one to the other be conveyed in a straight, lovely kind of a even-paced vocal piece? It cannot. Therefore I had to break it in all these phrases.
And Verdi certainly aids you here with all the diminuendos and crescendos and allegandos and everything that's marked.
That is why it's also so terribly necessary to have a great conductor with you, because you cannot do this one-handed. You have to have a great conductor who will help you with his orchestra, a great stage director who can help you on stage, and your colleagues that will help you also on stage, because you can have worked so hard to create an atmosphere, and all of a sudden one colleague of yours comes out singing in the bad vocal tone and spoils all this atmosphere, so you have to work again to recreate it. It is a teamwork of seriousness, of great science, of great faith, great sacrifice, and therefore we depend one on the other for the success of the performance.
What do you think Verdi had in mind with that final top D flat marked fil de voce?
Well, wouldn't I like to have asked him that if he were alive? Because it is so difficult.
Yes.
Well,
it's off stage, isn't it?
Yes, it's off stage, but you must remember also that these composers had to deal and had to serve the singers with technical difficulties and vocal effects. So every now and then you have a vocal effect that you have to perform. That today probably you wouldn't have done because music is so much more refined.
Yet this one moment does not seem apart from the rest of the scene. It's almost like a cap.
Maybe. I wonder.
Has it bothered you? I don't mean vocally, but I mean dramatically.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has, because you've been in the middle of the voice all the time, and all of a sudden you reach up high. There is not much justification. You caught me sort of off guard here, and I can't answer. But it has troubled me, and I was wondering whether it really was necessary. But I suppose he had his good reasons. They know better than us.
Let's listen now, if we may, to the final section of the sleepwalking scene from Macbeth.
It is so difficult, you see, to conclude this lovely interview, Mr. Ardoin, that does make so much sense and pleases me so much. It is difficult to explain to the public what we have to do to perform. It is difficult because it is a whole science. It has taken years of sacrifice, of study, of work. We cannot really pretend that the public understands, because you will have to learn that. If we could, it would be so much easier. And the music also would, rather singing, would be helped so much. They themselves, if they were more prepared when they go to the performance, they would understand and be able to justify so many, maybe even stupid things that they think we do, because they are not prepared. So really, if we could teach the public sometimes all these technical difficulties or all the way we work, even if we could have lessons, it would be most interesting and most profitable for them too. They would love opera much more, and they would stand also opera better and stand the good things and the bad things and have less patience or more patience and love us a little more too.
Well, I know that anyone who has heard our visit this afternoon has certainly profited from it. And
I hope so.
For myself, I must say that it's been one of the great joys of my life to realize that the person I've admired so as an artist is as beautiful as a human being.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for understanding me so much and giving me the possibility of expressing a few phrases, though they're very badly expressed.
I think they're rather brilliantly expressed. They're concise and to the point, just as your artistry is.
Thank you.